Hello, I'm Rollercoasters, and today I'll be counting down the top 10 most overrated roller coasters that I have experienced. These are roller coasters that receive a lot of praise, which I think is honestly unwarranted, because they don't live up to what many make them out to be. So to kick off the list, at number 10 is El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure. This coaster is one of the most famous coasters in this community, as it is a huge, intimate, prefabricated wooden coaster, which is often brought up when discussing the best wooden coasters in the world. This is actually the coaster on this list which ranks the highest for me, as I truly enjoyed it. However, I find that the strength of the airtime and the overall aggressiveness of this ride is exaggerated by many enthusiasts. People were claiming that the coaster pulled minus 2G, when in reality it pulled closer to minus 1, and while the numbers alone don't make a ride, the forces aren't nearly as strong as people made them out to be. It's also a matter of personal preference, as I don't really like the more gradual build up into the strong ejector on El Toro's drop and subsequent hills, whereas many people can overlook it because of how sustained the ejector is, which is why I'm not as big of a fan as most. So while this coaster is a world-class woody, don't expect it to be the most aggressive coaster out there, unlike what many enthusiasts may lead you to believe. Coming in at number 9 is another wooden coaster, but this time it's an RMC, which is Wildfire at Kolmarden. Many people consider Wildfire to be a top tier RMC, whereas I would say it's actually one of the weaker RMCs, since it currently ranks as my 7th favourite RMC out of the 8 I have ridden. This is mainly because of the pacing, which is a flaw that many people do point out. However, the people who rank this higher tend to overlook the pacing, which I unfortunately can't do. Despite Wildfire's first 3 elements being some of my favourite on any coaster, after that the ride really dies out, and generally has weaker elements considering it is an RMC. Many people also love this coaster because of the view. However, for me, a view alone cannot make a coaster. But I know that RMCs can be temperamental, so I might have ridden it on a bad day, which makes me excited to re-ride it, especially now since I've had so much more experience with roller coasters and RMCs. The number 8 spot goes to yet another wooden coaster, and that is the Voyage at Holiday World. This is another ride that I actually really enjoy, however there is a catch. The Voyage at night is perhaps the best coaster experience that you can get, but day rides, especially in the early hours, are pretty bad honestly. My first few rides on Voyage were so slow, it gave sparse floater and a few laterals, making it a fairly uneventful journey through the woods. But on my ride at 5 PM, the ride had finally sped up enough to keep a decent pace, making it worthy of my top 20. But what really secured the top 10 spot for me was night rides. Unfortunately, it is fairly hard to get night rides on Voyage, but many people act like it is amazing even in the morning, which I just can't see. Even when I was at Holiday World, there were people saying Voyage is their number 1 after a morning ride, despite it not even making my top 50 in the morning. So I can see the hype for Voyage night rides for sure, however it is by no means a world beater during the day, which many claim it to be. Finally, at the number 7 spot, we have the first steel coaster on the list, and that is Magnum XL 200 at Cedar Point. I'll just start off by saying, for its age, this ride is phenomenal. However, it doesn't live up to some of the newer, more modern steel coasters. But recently there has been a massive resurgence in love for Magnum, with people saying it's an ejector machine with some of the best airtime out there. And I've even heard a few people say that it's better than Steel Vengeance. While it is a really fun ride, I only found there to be 3 good ejector moments, with the final few bunny hills. And honestly, because of the restraints, those ejector moments are actually really painful. Furthermore, they are not sustained at all because the shaping of the hill is not parabolic, meaning you're only receiving a short burst of ejector. Then the rest of the ride is just a fairly pointless drop, a huge airtimeless hill, an actual solid floater hill, which is actually my favourite element of the ride because the sustained floater on it is amazing. Then there's an uncomfortable turnaround, and a few airtimeless bunny hills before the aggressive finale. However, despite me not liking this ride as much as some, I hope this ride still stays at the park, as it is a milestone to show how far coaster design has come, and it's still a really fun ride, just not a masterpiece, like some enthusiasts are saying. The number 6 spot is going to another classic steel coaster, Olympia Looping, which is on the travelling circuit. Many people, especially Americans, say that is one of the most intense coasters ever built with its 5 loops. However, that is just not true. For me, the ride was fairly forceless compared to most other Schwarzkopfs, and you definitely won't come close to growing out on it. For me, it's an average Schwarzkopf, or maybe even below average because of those awful restraints, and honestly, it doesn't deserve all the praise it gets. It is by no means a top 100 coaster in the world, and if you really want an elite Schwarzkopf multi-looper, go to Six Flags over Georgia and ride Mindbender. At number 5 is a coaster that even I am guilty of overrating, and that is Taron at Phantasialand. And I know the theming for this ride is incredible, however as soon as you take that away, the ride isn't anything too amazing. It has some decent floats and good laterals, with some fairly aggressive moments. However, most of the ride is spent meandering around without any amazing forces. This has got to be one of the worst paced major Intamin coasters, as the second part of each half really dies out despite the coaster's high maximum speed. However, what really makes me love this ride is the amazing restraints and the atmosphere built up by the theming, lighting and especially the music. However, that can only push the ride up so high for me. It is by no means one of the best coaster layouts in the world, despite it being really fun, and it is certainly not as intense as many people, especially less travelled enthusiasts, would say. The number 4 spot goes to a coaster in my home country of the UK, and that is Nemesis at Alton Towers. Nemesis is regarded by many to be one of the best inverts in the world, but it doesn't have much to back it up honestly. If you take away the trenches, you essentially have a toned down version of Flight Deck at California's Great America. However, Nemesis doesn't even have such strong forces, and it has weak pacing with the many raised up turns. Recently, in the UK and European community, the hype for Nemesis has died down to an acceptable level, but many Americans who come over to the UK still go crazy over Nemesis, which I don't think is justified, especially since Black Mamba is just a longer, better themed and more intense version of Nemesis, and it isn't even too far away. The number 3 spot goes to Clajo at Tripsdrill, a Gerstlauer Infinity coaster, which has gotten so much love recently. Before riding, I'd heard that it had decent forces, and based off of the layout, I was expecting something like Anubis at Plopsaland but with lap bars. But instead, I got an uncomfortable, forceless ride with awkwardly profiled elements, with little to make up for it. It has a decent launch, but that's honestly it. The rest of the ride is fairly boring. I even rewrote it many times just to make sure that I had a fair judgment on it, and every time it disappointed me. It is such a letdown as Tripsdrill is such a beautiful park, yet their headliner is such an underwhelming coaster. Now for me, the top 2 is really hard to decide. They are both airtime based wooden coasters, but one is considered one of the best coasters in the world, and the other one is just considered the best of its type. So after a long time deciding between the two, coming in at the number 2 spot is Mystic Timbers at Kings Island. So many people would say that this is the best GCI outside of China, and that it has amazing airtime, which is just not true. If you didn't know, Millennium Flyers cannot handle negative forces, yet some people even claim that Mystic Timbers has ejector. But knowing this, I went into Mystic Timbers with low expectations, but it's still disappointed. The thing is, the airtime can't be strong, and because of GCI's profiling on the hills, it isn't even that sustained. So you just get these awkward pops of floater, which is just nothing impressive at all. And I know that it wasn't even running bad, as everyone else I went with loved the coaster. I guess I'm just not a fan of these airtime based GCIs, even though I greatly preferred Eurus and the Drak to Mystic Timbers. And honestly, I would have rather Mystic Timbers been a laterals focused twister layout in my opinion. So, coming in at the number 1 spot is a ride considered by many to be the best wooden coaster ever built, and that is Phoenix at Knoebels, which is in reality a family woody with some solid floater. The only reason that this coaster gets any hype is because of the buzz bars, but because of that people actually say it has ejector, which is not true, as if it really had ejector you'd be flying out of the train. It just has solid floater, which is fun, but not good enough to be one of the best coasters in the world. I've seen well-travelled enthusiasts say that Phoenix is better than rides such as Skyrush or DC Rivals, which I cannot even begin to comprehend. It is fun for what it is, but it cannot even compare to the modern wooden coasters, and as soon as you know how to get room on other coasters, the novelty of buzz bars wears off. I enjoyed this coaster, but I genuinely can't see how some say it is an elite coaster. So, that was my top 10 most overrated coasters. Comment down below your opinions on my list, and remember, this was all for fun. I know I have some weird opinions, and everyone can enjoy whatever coaster they like. I would also love to see what you think of some of the most overrated coasters in the comment section down below, and if you enjoyed this video, then like and subscribe for more roller coaster based content.